Hoist the black flag high, let the cables hum. Code and cannon ready, futures beating like a drum. Charts are drawn in circuits, treasure maps in AI. We're sailing for the edge where bold ideas never die.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Pirates Only, a podcast where we interview top early stage founders and ask them the questions on how they're changing the world, what they're building, and then also some advice for some of the founders that might be listening that want to follow in their footsteps. I have I would say a good friend, but also a portfolio company, Eric from Electroflow, co-founder and CEO of Electroflow. Thank you for being on today. For folks listening, we know we like to dive right in. Could you start by giving us a quick introduction of what Electroflow is building in the most simple terms possible?
Sure thing. Great to be on with you, Matty V.
Yes.
At Electroflow, we are building a system to make battery electrode materials, specifically this material called lithium iron phosphate, or LFP for short. And we do it all from one integrated process, starting from this lithium-containing salt water called a brine. And essentially we get these brines, these salt waters, from waste streams. So think like oil, gas, water, geothermal water, like other mineral extractions that have lithium in their waste stream. We take those, put it through our process, and we make LFP from that salt water in just 3 steps. And this is really groundbreaking because when you think about how we conventionally make LFP from brine, it's more like 10 steps to go from that brine all the way to LFP. You got to make like a lithium chloride intermediate, all these other post-processing, finally get to LFP after 10 steps. So our mission is to unlock this crucial LFP electrode material to make an energy abundant future. And happy to talk shop about that.
Yeah, so maybe for the audience here, what is LFP used in? Like, what is the actual, why do we need it? What is the use for it?
Yeah, LFP is an electrode material that goes into a lithium ion battery. So folks are probably familiar with lithium ion batteries. You got one in your pocket, like almost everyone has one in their iPhone. These days, oftentimes you have it in your car. EVs use lithium ion batteries, and increasingly big use cases for lithium ion batteries are for storage of energy on the grid to sort of even out seasonality. And also for like upcoming stuff like drones and robots. All of those are going to use lithium ion batteries as well. And LFP, among the existing electrode materials that could be used for lithium ion battery, is a pretty awesome material, if I do say so. It's by far the cheapest dollar per energy type material you can use in batteries these days. It's from very earth abundant stuff, iron and phosphate. I mean, these are very common minerals in the earth. Iron's actually the most common in earth. And the only critical mineral then is the lithium. And we're solving that by starting from these lithium containing salt waters, extracting that and making LFP out of that. So it's really important we make this LFP material at scale at a very low price point so we can put batteries everywhere and unlock really cheap, abundant energy.
Maybe I know the answer to this, but I think the audience would appreciate it. How is LFP typically made today? Because I think that goes into why what you're doing is so important.
Sure thing. To get the precursors for LFP, really the tough one to get oftentimes is the lithium precursor. So to get that lithium precursor, specifically a lithium carbonate species, you often go to these like naturally occurring saltwater brines. Happens to be that in South America, they have the most lithium-rich brines in the world. And you pump that brine up to this big, huge pond. Literally think like miles-long ponds. And you just let that brine sit there, and the sun evaporates the water. And after you let that sit long enough, you can pluck off like a lithium chemical from that. And then that's not even the right chemical form yet. You got to do like all this post-processing to make it from lithium chloride to lithium carbonate. Finally, you have lithium carbonate after like 6 steps, starting from that brine. And then from there, you got lithium carbonate. You add the iron and the phosphate with that, and you mix that all up, and you heat it up to like many hundreds of degrees Celsius. And after all those steps, total like 10 steps, brine to LFP, you finally have an LFP electrode material, which is really just like a black powder that can host lithium ions for use in batteries.
So from a cost standpoint and a time standpoint, sounds like before what you've created here, it was both more expensive and takes longer. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So these big evaporation ponds I talked about, like you got to build that huge pond, and to get it to steady state is like over a year typically to get that thing actually operational. And then, that just gets you a precursor to LFP. You're still not at LFP yet. You got to make a big factory that like adds the iron and the phosphate with the lithium and then make that all into LFP. So we're cutting that down both time-wise and cost-wise significantly with our process innovation.
Is there a number, multiple percent or something that you can share on what even maybe
Sure.
the ultimate goal would be?
Yeah, absolutely. So these days, LFP is about $6,000 per ton. If you buy it in the Chinese market, where actually 99% of LFP is made, which we can get into. I know. Yeah, it's crazy. Uh, our goal is to produce LFP at 50% cheaper than that LFP currently made in China. Our goal is to get $3,000 per ton or less production cost of LFP to significantly undercut the existing market for LFP and just have it everywhere. Like once you're half as expensive, you can use it in, many, many more applications.
Did you say 99% of it currently is from China?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So
That
this
is
absolutely
that's
crucial
not that's
material.
yeah.
Yeah, this absolutely crucial material is 99% made in China. This LFP material is going in over half of every battery that comes off the line today and is 99% made in China. So, beyond just like making it cheaper, we're also at least diversifying the supply chain a little bit beyond China to make this
Yeah.
LFP material.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
obviously creating it to a point where it's more accessible for us here in the United States as well. We
Yeah.
definitely will dive into because I'm always excited about the potential unlocks that new technologies like this creates. You already hinted that what happens when we make this cheaper and the things there. But before we go into that, I don't want to get too far ahead. Could you talk a little bit about uh why this, like why now? You mentioned all those things, but maybe why now for you? So maybe touch a
Yeah.
little bit on the founding story. What were you doing right before this and decided that this is a problem that we need to solve and problem that I need to solve?
Absolutely. So my background is in battery research. Like I had been doing battery research for about 10 years actually before spinning out the company. And yeah, over that time, I just became super fascinated with the space. I started battery research in like 2014 or so. And I was working on like next gen anode materials for batteries at the time, turns out. But what really caught my eye was like, that was the super early days of Tesla. And I became kind of obsessed with Tesla. I followed that journey very closely. And it was a lot of tenuous times along that path, but ultimately now it's like one of the biggest success stories to come out of US companies in the past decade or so. So became kind of obsessed with batteries, really obsessed with EVs. I drive an EV today. And then after 10 years of research, I thought actually my ultimate goal was going to be go be a professor and do some battery research and like change the world like that. But that all changed because when I went to do my postdoc at Stanford, which was like supposed to be the last step before you like go apply to be a professor and then research batteries for the rest of your life. For the first time when I went to Stanford as a postdoc, I actually learned what a startup was. And yeah, once I realized what it was, I was like, oh man, that's like actually what I wanted to do all along. Do something in the battery space that could move the needle, bring it to the real world, real people's hands on the road. And yeah, I just got super hooked. And I was lucky to meet my co-founder, Evan, when I joined that Stanford postdoc lab as well. And we really hit it off, big battery nerds, and the rest is history, kind of. Yeah.
That should be on a shirt, battery nerds.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly right. I think you mentioned Tesla there too.
We're pretty good
I
at the
think people
shirts
forget
thing.
that yeah. Well, and I called this out before we started recording. I think you are
Yeah.
wearing one of the best swag shirts there too.
Yeah,
Maybe,
just the company
we'll put
attire.
we'll put a link in the bio to your shop that you can maybe use to raise your next round for. It'll be enough to raise.
Sounds good.
I think that people forget oftentimes that Tesla, in a lot of ways, obviously they make cars and all these things, but their advancements are almost, not all, but some of the biggest ones are on the battery side. Like they've figured out a way to create some of the best batteries in the world, which to your point earlier, when you can unlock better battery technology, you can unlock cars, robots, all the things that they are going to be obviously going into.
Totally.
How big is the team now?
We got 16 people as of right now, which is
Awesome.
pretty crazy because 2 years ago it was 2 people. So it's been an awesome journey, and hiring all these folks. We have an awesome team. It's all engineers and chemists right now. And yeah, we're bought in. We love this stuff.
And you were in the Bay Area, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're over in San Bruno by the SFO airport. We literally, like, you look out the window, you see the planes taking off and landing.
I love it.
Every single day.
Makes it easy. SFO is, if you can get in and out of that airport, it's always for the better.
Yeah.
And how much have you raised to this point?
Yeah, we raised a $2.8 million pre-seed about 2 years ago, like late 2024. And then we just raised our $10 million seed round in late 2025, actually. So It's been awesome. Yeah, we're trying to move as fast as possible and, like keep the momentum rolling.
I love that. Congrats on that. We're obviously very big fans of that and excited to see how much you guys have done. It's such a short amount of time. You mentioned 16 people on the team side. I always feel like once you start getting into the mid-teens, you probably feel this now, you actually kind of start feeling like a real company,
Yeah,
which is both stressful but also exciting because you can, especially if you hire really good people, which I know you have, things start to move very quickly and it becomes very, very fun.
yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's just kind of cool. Like, yeah, beyond building a product, making that bigger, like building the team and making that bigger, and like seeing like the person to person interactions, and like people are legitimately friends at the company and things like that. It's just a really awesome journey, like in that regard.
Yep. I love that. Let's now dive a little bit into kind of the future forward predicting things. You mentioned, what happens when this technology does allow a 50% decrease in some of the technology to create more efficient, cheaper battery technology. You mentioned in phones and drones. What are some of the things that you nerd out about what could
Mm,
potentially change as you continue to push this technology forward?
totally. Yeah. The big one as of this exact moment is data center energy. I really think like the long-term solution for all these data centers is put solar, wind, and batteries. And it can be off grid, no requirement that you're on grid as long as you have the backup storage, which is provided by the batteries. So that's absolutely crucial. Like we need so many more batteries, and specifically LFP batteries too. Like LFP is the long cycle life, like cheap option for batteries. And we need so many of them if we're going to power all these data centers. But beyond that, like what I'm actually more excited about in the bit farther out future is all these robots. Yeah, I think there's going to be billions with a B robots, like in say, I don't know, 10 years. Like these humanoid types, like a bunch of companies are producing these. All of them need a battery. Like that is like the beating heart of all these robots. Uh, so we're going to provide the materials for those too. It's going to be freaking awesome.
Do you have an idea of like, I'm sure maybe you've ran some of the numbers. What does the demand look like for robots, electric cars, phones, all these things? I mean, it's got to be, you probably know the answer. What are we looking at as far as
Yeah.
scale? And then the
Yeah.
reason I ask it is, what does that mean then on our demand for the batteries then? Like it has to obviously be exponential too.
Yeah. Yeah. Stay tuned. I'm going to write a Substack post about this. But the primer is, yeah, right. Primer is between now and 2040, we estimate you're going to need 40x more battery capacity, the vast majority of which will be LFP battery capacity. So that's a pretty big number.
40 times by 2040, is that what you said?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh my goodness. That's like one of those things. And humans are so bad at kind of grappling that, like a multiple of 40. Maybe I'll put a
Yeah.
graphic on right now that shows like an object that grows 40 times. That is huge. Is a
Yeah.
lot of that from, you think, on the robotic side, or where is the heaviest demand?
Yeah.
Data centers, obviously, probably on there too. But what are some of the
Yeah.
objects that you think are going to be for the
Yeah.
reason for that?
Yeah. Yeah. Data centers / grid storage is a good portion. I don't know, call it like 30, 40%. And then
Okay.
if we're right about this robot thing, like that, I think is the long-term huge demand for batteries. Like if there's billions of robots with a B, like that's a lot of batteries. So yeah, I'm pumped about that. And I hope the future is like that because that'd be freaking awesome. So need a lot of batteries for that.
What do you mean like on the robotic side? Do you imagine it being mostly probably on the enterprise side or like factory and hard
Mhm.
labor and those types of things? Or do you imagine it continuing to grow on the consumer side as well?
Yeah, I think the future I see is a lot of humanoid robots. So, they could be like sort of enterprise type robots, like they'd walk around a factory and do useful stuff. Or it could be like they do your laundry or like they like clean the house or things like this. I think like both types will be very significant markets and all it requires batteries. Yeah.
Are there any, obviously, robotics and phones and all the things that we're using today? Are there any other unlocks of technologies that maybe we're not even thinking about right
Mm,
now that having
mm.
some of this increased battery output or cheaper battery output would be, I don't know, create?
Sure. Like like I think wearables are going to be a really
Mm.
interesting thing. Whether it's to track fitness or like to monitor health conditions, like these already exist, but once batteries are just truly everywhere and extremely cheap and very, very safe, like we can really expand the horizon on like what types of wearables we can work with. You've probably seen like these glasses and headsets and the Neuralink type stuff. Like those require a decent amount of power and you got to make sure those are extremely safe. You don't want any of those going bad. And, it's like kind of 24/7 if you're using stuff like that. So you need decent amount of batteries for that type of stuff as well.
Is there a benefit? I mean, with those devices you mentioned too, there's also a size component from a battery standpoint, could you maybe educate the audience on what it means to create a battery that small? Because you're right, it's like a power size, all these combinations coming in together. Is that something, I guess, that your technology would also allow, not only cheaper, but
Mm.
maybe cheaper in a smaller package with same output type of thing?
Yeah, yeah. In general, with batteries, there's always a trade-off of energy density versus like cycle life and safety. Usually, if you have higher energy density, you have to have a trade-off of lower cycle life and less safe.
Yep.
LFP
Safe being like
has
heat, like what does it mean by exploding, like
sure,
those types of things? Or what
yeah,
does the
yeah. The
safety piece kind of mean there?
Yeah, the term in the industry is thermal runaway, which, yeah, essentially results in an explosion, which you certainly don't want. And LFP is a great material in that the risk of thermal runaway, these days, especially how highly it's engineered, is like de minimis at this point. LFP is extremely, extremely safe, which makes it very suitable for things like wearables, where if anything goes wrong, that's a horrible outcome. And it has not as high energy density as like some other materials, but still very competitive energy density. So you get the benefit of like very long cycle life, very safe, with still like high energy density, although not the highest energy density you could get in an electrode material.
Yeah, would that be, I mean, I guess I'm trying to think of industries where you would need kind of the high, like, as cars would be like a requirement for like high density for long range, or what are some of those things that you'd really want high density versus low?
Yeah, you can think of stuff like really heavy duty trucking probably makes sense to have a very high energy density because like every bit of weight matters. Stuff like drones, to an extent, probably you want the high
Yeah,
energy
true.
density stuff because it's hard to lift off when you have a heavy battery. And beyond drones, even stuff like so-called eVTOLs, electric vertical takeoff and landing devices, those probably you want the high energy density stuff. And you're willing to live with like the decreased safety and decreased cycle life in those
Yeah.
particular applications.
Yeah. So you probably see, I mean, especially being in the Bay Area, being in hard tech, I feel like we're in the middle of a renaissance right now.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about maybe some of the tangential industries or things that, I mean, you're in the thick of it, that you're excited about right now? Maybe talk a little bit about how fun it is to be a builder right now
Yeah.
in your space and beyond.
Yeah, building real stuff is super cool. Would highly recommend it to anyone. Like literally, it's just like rewarding to see. I don't know. It was like a napkin sketch like 2.5 years ago that we were working with pretty much. And now it's like this big electrochemical cell stack to do lithium extraction that's like bigger than me. So that's pretty awesome. Like building real stuff is super cool. Also, like, yeah, just this idea of like making factories is like such like in the zeitgeist today is like so negative connotation to like make a factory or whatever, but it's super cool. Like this factory of today is like totally different than your grandfather's factory. Like there's so much technology that goes into manufacturing and making real stuff that's just super fascinating. And like along this journey, I've gotten to learn how stuff is made, which I don't know,
Yep.
it's like enriching my like
Because
daily
you're
life.
required,
Yeah,
you're building hardware, and this kind of
that's right.
requires you to figure out where each of those pieces come from.
Yeah, and it is like very fascinating to come to see what creative solutions people have come up with to like make stuff, Like a toy car you see in like the like supermarket or whatever. You're like, "Oh, actually like they came up with a pretty slick way of like making that little toy car." And they're doing it at scale and making millions of them. And it's like a lot of these things you can translate into making like stuff like we're making. Like similar type of procedures can be used to make stuff that we're making as well.
I've heard that from other hard tech founders, where when you start making stuff that actually has to work and then you actually have to scale it, the small things like walking into a Target and seeing, like you mentioned, like a toy car or something
Yeah.
else, your brain immediately starts going like, oh, I wonder how they sourced like that particular piece or the wheel, or like how do they put those things together? And it's like you're probably doomed forever now to not be able to walk into a place and not figure out how it's built.
Yeah. Yeah. And just on a broader note, a lot, rightly so, like a lot of the hype these days is around AI, but like the slept on thing about AI is we need to like mine so many minerals and like make so much hardware to produce all the energy that's going to be required to train these models. And yeah, there's certainly a hardware renaissance coming right now that's going to be associated with this AI boom. So, just hoping people realize that and build more real stuff.
Yeah, and I think that the one of the more common things that we see on the Black Flag side for applications, in fact, we're about to release the Black Flag 100 list, and robotics and manufacturing, I posted about this the other day, is the most nominated of, like, from a company standpoint. But it's probably, as we build the list, it's going to be middle of the pack as far as how many unique companies are doing it. The reason why that's exciting is that it just means that there are more individual or singular companies that are building on the manufacturing level. We're seeing so many, the common term right now, and I can't remember what it is exactly, but YC is a big fan of this, where it's, what is it, like AI driven service businesses, essentially.
Mm,
So you think about being a law firm, but you're a law firm that's just embedded into AI, so that you can take on 10x more clients and have 10x more output. We're seeing the same thing with factories, where it's like, we're going to buy an existing factory, build a new factory, but it's going to be AI embedded or software embedded right out of the gate. And when you look at some of the business plans for some of these factories, they almost are software. It's such a weird
mm,
thing to try to wrap your head around, but
yep.
it's software. You can talk all day about whether each of these individually are like venture backable businesses. But one thing I know for sure is that they are going to be very successful individual businesses. If you were to operate a factory, let's say you open one up in the Bay Area and you build it to a point where it's software enabled and integrated, and you have a customer, like, let's say that you need a particular part, and you go to this website for this factory, you upload a CAD design, you work with it. They have AI that interprets the CAD design, sources the materials, figures out if they already have it. If not, it orders the materials directly into the factory.
Super
It
cool.
goes into a loop where it's going to make the mold and make the product. Obviously, it's still hands-on in a lot of ways, like a lot of software is. But I imagine a future where hardware and software are so interconnected that your ability to order parts or to make stuff is going to be as if you were ordering something on Amazon today, or something like that, which
Yeah.
is crazy. And I think it obviously enables a whole wave of founders to follow along in hardware, which, like you said, is more fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm here for that future. Like, to that point, Matty V, big thing that we did early on at Electroflow was we purchased, I guess, an army of like 3D printers. And they make
Yeah.
everything for us. They make like just little trinkets that are useful around the warehouse. They make like the cell stack pieces themselves. And yeah, that's like in the future, I think you're right. Like there'll be plenty of like farms of 3D printers or similar like molding companies that just like you give them a CAD design, they give it to you like next day, like an Amazon for CAD like stuff. That's
Yep.
gonna be awesome.
And then it'll be at scale too. So I think another common thing that we hear a lot is, to your point, a lot of people are building these things in house, especially if they are prototypes or early. They're not the scaled version that you might be starting to sell to customers and those things. But the ability to build your own hardware with 3D printers and some of those things is a massive unlock that even a few years ago you couldn't do. That even the materials now that you can use in some of these 3D printers is fantastic, and it's no longer a bottleneck. You just
Yep.
need something very specific. You design it, you print it, and you might have it by end of day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's super, super cool. Like, that's why building real stuff is cool. Like, these days, if you want like this like weird shape thing that fits in this exact notch or whatever, just make a CAD file, print it, it's done in like 2 hours. So yeah, totally different game now compared to, say, 10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's certainly, there's still a lot of software. We still see a lot of software. Certainly, I think with AI, which borderlines, sometimes AI borderlines hard tech, I think, in my mind, because some of
Mm,
the things that people are building with AI is indeed hard. It's not just out of the box wrapper type of thing. There's a lot of great businesses being built there, obviously, as well. But I think with hardware, we're in this completely new renaissance. We're seeing way more founders that are even coming right out of school, coming out of programs like the one that you came through. And instead of going into a traditional job, a 9 to 5 job behind, or working on a computer or building something in software, they're choosing to build things in hardware. I will say it is still much harder to build in hardware than it is in software. A
yeah.
lot of founders that are listening to this right now, could you maybe talk a little bit? We can go into a bunch of different questions and advice. So I'm not looking for the one piece of advice you'd give founders. We could provide a lot of them. But what are some of the things that maybe you wished, as a first time founder and also a first time hardware founder,
Mm,
knew in the early days? So let's pitch this to somebody who's, maybe they have an idea and they have no idea how to get started. What is some advice that you would give them on moving forward?
totally. Yeah. The saying goes, hardware is hard. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that is accurate, I suppose. To build in hardware, I think the really crucial thing is to like set milestones that are like 6 months, a year out, that really actually move the needle for your business. Because for us, like we started with like a cell that's like that big, right? When we first spun out. And then, that's pretty far away from like making commercial amounts of LFP or lithium. And so then you have to ask yourself, like, what can I do with 2 or 3 people in 6 months that is a awesome proof point that gets people excited and like legitimately means that the business is progressing as it should. So setting those milestones is really hard. So you have to like think pretty deeply about like, what is the key thing that I need to de-risk right now in the next 6 months? For us, that was, I don't know, it became more intuitive over time, but like make the cell bigger and make sure the performance is similar to what you were seeing at the small scale, more cell units to that stack, and then get like a sample out to a potential customer or partner that proves that you're real and you can make the right purity spec. So that's like absolutely crucial in the hard tech space. Like finding proof points that are not 10 years out, but like 6 months or a year out is really, really important. Yeah. And then all sorts of stuff about like when you go to raise, like how do you explain what you've accomplished and like do it in a way that VCs can grab onto and understand and get excited about backing you. And we can get to that if you'd like as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely go into on the fundraising side. On the hardware side, though, as folks are building these, I think with software, what was unique for a long time is there wasn't really a moat. The go-to-market was the moat. And I still think that hardware companies are going to have the same realization. It's just going to be a little bit further out because when you start a hardware company, so much of the first months or even years are clearing out some of the potential risk, technical risk, but the go-to-market risk is typically handled later. But sticking with the technical risk, you mentioned obviously building some of these prototypes and doing those things. The question we get with founders a lot, and I'm curious if you have a thought on it, is how do you build a protective moat around these things? We have founders that are like, well, I don't want to build this until I can get this patent or protecting it. How do you recommend or give advice to founders that want to protect what they're building as they go? Is that a waste of time? Should they just build and then figure that stuff out later? Or do you recommend that maybe earlier than they think, start protecting themselves with patents or things like that? Because it does take a while to get those.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you should patent stuff as early as you can, really. That's key protection for the business. Yeah. You're allowed, by the way, to patent an idea that you have not proven yet. That's an allowed thing to do. Like if you have an idea and you think it's really good, you can go ahead and patent that immediately if you'd like, given like there are legal fees associated with it and stuff. But if you're serious about making the business, you gotta be patenting stuff like constantly. I will say though, like on that, like beyond patenting, which is very important, like I feel like a lot of hard tech founders are too secretive about their idea. Like, and that's actually a big issue. Like the honest truth is that like if very few businesses are going to fail because someone steals your idea, like you're kind of the guinea pig testing if the idea is good or not. And no one is just going to like in general, hear your idea and just immediately go copy you and take your market. But you do need to explain your idea clearly to potential hires, potential investors, potential partners, or else they're just going to think you're like snake oil. So like, I think a big like mistake founders make in the deep tech hardware space is like, they don't explain their idea to people or they're too secretive about it. I think that's the wrong way to approach it, actually. Yeah.
It also gives you good practice because you're always pitching, always pitching. I mean, you mentioned it to customers, certainly to hires and certainly investors. But the more that you can kind of get those at bats, the better. We see that all the time too. We see it with software. Founders in general, I think, are very protective because it's your baby at the end of the day. And the last thing you would want is for somebody to take your baby. So I completely understand it, but agree that the right course of action is typically to not at least be afraid of that. Like obviously maybe don't spill the beans on everything, but you can certainly at a high level explain what you're doing and why, and then just believe in yourself and have the confidence that you're going to be the one to beat anybody. Doesn't matter if this person at this like meetup that you met likes your idea and says they might go do that. You're going to beat them anyway. You have to believe in yourself.
Yeah. I mean, if you're serious about doing a business, like that's your life's work. You got to like super dedicate to it. So yeah, you got to believe that like, even if someone tries to copy you, they're months or years behind. You have all the learnings so far. You're building on those learnings. Like this, you're like oftentimes the original inventor. You know the nuances of how the thing works. Like you just got to believe, you're going to scale it out faster and win. That's what it boils down to.
It does. And I think it's the cliche question that you'll hear for VCs always ask is, why you, like, what was your unique insight? At the end of the day, we're just trying to dive into that exact piece because if the idea is good, and we hope that it is, and it probably is, other people will try to do the same. So to your point, you need to start protecting yourself as soon as you start building it. You need to just start moving quickly and iterating on it. If you have all the learnings and your unique insight is indeed unique, then you should be able to win out, hopefully. And as a VC, that's what we're also trying to look for.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Speaking on the fundraising process, I think hard tech is still, it's very different, and a lot of even VCs are still learning how to invest into hard tech because, again, like I mentioned, for decades, certainly the last couple decades, the hard part, the technical risk was not really the hard part because software, you hire the right people and you can build software and scale software. It felt like it was kind of copy paste. That wasn't a worry for VCs. What was always a worry was go to market. How do you actually get this in front of enough customers and convince them to buy it? And then you have to make sure the churn is low and all these things. Hardware kind of has an inverse side. And this is what I always tell founders is that if you are struggling to convince investors that there's a market here, then it's so hard for you to raise because the hard part is actually the technical risk that you're going to have to build through and show some sort of pieces for. Could you talk a little bit on how you raise capital, maybe that first round that you mentioned? And then maybe we talk about how was it easier or harder to go into that second round? But yeah, at a high level, let's talk a little bit about that first round of fundraising. How did you do that? What was the story you were able to tell so that founders listening that are looking to fundraise can learn from it?
Absolutely. Yeah, man, fundraising is definitely like a skill that can be acquired, but it is pretty different from probably anything like an aspiring founder has done before, I would say. So what took a lot of learning for me and iteration was that fundraising in the end is all about the story. It's really like an emotional sales process. And what it is not a research talk, which took me a lot of iteration to figure out, coming from a science background. So you don't overload the slides with data, like don't make confusing plots that have like all sorts of stuff going on. Like you have to convince investors, first and foremost, the market is gigantic. You have some unique insights that's going to let you enter that market and be 10x more performant or 10x cheaper, something like this. And you have the right team that can go execute on that. Like that's what it boils down to. And it's easy to say, hard to put that in slides, hard to like enunciate it when you go pitch to investors. But that's like what mindset you should enter fundraising with, and it's counterintuitive. It's unlike stuff probably aspiring founders have done before. But yeah, it can be learned.
It's also tough because we're smart people, but we're not that smart. And especially we don't have the luxury of going so deep in any particular thing. We have to have a lot of knowledge or little knowledge about a lot of things. So we have to go, a mile wide and an inch deep. But so much of what hardware is today requires a mile deep of understanding. And founders go, 100 miles deep on their particular problems. You mentioned with batteries, there's maybe no better person in the world that could just talk about battery technology and why what you're doing is so unique to batteries and why it makes the difference between a good battery, a bad battery, the cost, all these things. And I think founders get in the trouble of thinking that that's the unique part, like showing how smart you are at those things, which is true. But investors just have to kind of believe that I know that Eric knows a lot about batteries. He's building this thing in batteries, and I just trust that he's going to be able to figure these things out. So once you get to a point of just showing that you know what you're talking about, you just stop there. You stop talking about it. To your point, you have to build a narrative. You have to explain in very software almost like terms of this is what we're building. This is who it's for. This is why it's better. This is how we plan on scaling that. This is what happens after we scale that. This is everything going up into the right. And the hardest thing that hard tech founders have to do is put something that's so complex that you've spent maybe years researching into something that feels like it's just a little bit like this big. And that's hard. It's hard to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a big challenge for me. Seriously, coming from an academic background, your inclination is to like self-doubt or like cast doubt upon your own findings. That's like scientific rigor in a nutshell. But like when you're pitching about the future prospects of the company. And like in that case, like you need to like get out of that scientific mindset and more into like okay, we're going to get more resources in. What is possible? Like when that happens, like how big can it be? Like who are the people that are going to help us along the way? Like what are like low hanging fruits, initial ways to enter the market and pitch that? Like not like I doubt everything, like which is inherent to like scientific people's nature. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
Did you notice, was your second fundraise easier than your first, or how did those two like positions differ? Because you obviously were further along in the second one.
Yeah. Yeah. Not easier. It's like two different processes, really. I would say like the practice of the first fundraise, the pre-seed, helped a lot. Just having some more face time with investors and like honing that first pitch for the pre-seed and like going through the process of like looping in legal to like actually get everything closed. Like that when you do that for the first time, like you don't know what it's going to be like. So in that regard, maybe the second time was logistically a bit easier, smoother, whatever you want to say. Never easy. Like it's absolutely never easy. Like the process is like grueling. It is like fast paced. Like you're going to work like every waking moment, including weekends during fundraising. You just got to be prepared for that. But if you are efficient about it, like you can close it very quick and like find awesome investors that are part of the team now, and then back to building it bigger.
You mentioned obviously being able to tell a good story in the narrative and be specific and concise. All those things are valuable. Any high level fundraising specific advice you'd give to hard tech founders other than that, whether it's on the process, how they can build up an investor network, anything like that?
Yeah. Well, first I would throw in a little pitch for Matty V's other podcast, the fundraising series.
Yes.
Yeah. I've listened to probably like 10 of those already, Matty V, just so you know.
Nice.
They're really helpful.
I love it. Oh,
That
that's
helps you get in
awesome.
the mind of a VC, by the way. Like understand how they think will affect how you pitch. Certainly. Like
Yes.
you have to like start doing that to really hone your pitch. On other tidbits of advice, like your pitch super matters. Like do not skimp on spending time on your pitch. Super, super matters. They're like, you're like, oh, how hard can it be? Like 10 slides or something, 10 to 15 slides. It's really hard. Like,
Yeah.
what
Especially
Matty
for
V,
technical heavy.
yeah, what Matty V described of condensing like something like that's this complicated into something that's like this simple is really, really hard. And getting the words right, getting the graphics right, not having overly busy slides. Putting in another pitch, there's this guy named Matty V who's really good at helping on pitches. If you ever want to hit him up, helped me a lot
I
for the
love it.
seed.
I've thought
Yeah.
about doing some office hours for that. Maybe I'll open those back up for folks.
Yeah, yeah, but pitch super matters. And it is a process of honing that pitch. You also asked about like making the list of investors and sort of like entering the fundraising process with that list already set. And you have to actually run a process when you go out to raise. Like you can't just be sporadically meeting one investor a week. Like like for better or worse, like it's never going to close if you do that. There's no FOMO induced. There's no reason that they have to make a decision. Like you're just talking to one per week and like they can keep just learning more about your business, keep following you, but no one's going to steal their deal. Like that's kind of what it boils down to. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's not unfortunate that it works like that. It's just, it works like that. That's how it is. So you need to come into fundraising with a process where you have a list of investors that you think are awesome. You need to contact them all in a short period of time, get those meetings scheduled, during the process, keep the investors updated of like how far along you are with the other folks you're talking to. And with all that strategy beforehand, you can go finish a successful round. Yeah.
It's so hard. It's an impossible process.
Yeah.
But if you do some of those things and you do it with confidence and you're very good at explaining why you're passionate about it, all these things, it'll come together and it's not an impossible task. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and another quick plug.
Yeah.
Like if you, like me, had no exposure to like the VC world before starting the company, a good starting point is VC Sheets. So
I'm not paying you to do these. You're just
I know
plugging
he's
all
not
these
paying.
things.
Matty V, if you can't tell, has helped me a lot. But start with VC Sheets. It has, you can submit your deck there. It finds like suitable VCs for you. That's a good start for your list. From there, maybe they know some other VCs that they think would be good fits that can help build your list. You need to make a list of 100 plus investors if you're going to really improve your odds of success in the round. So yeah, that's a good place to start. And friends, of course, you have founder friends, ask them who are the good VCs, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more kind of quick topic here that a lot of founders are always curious about. So I always say there's kind of three main pillars that are very hard about starting a business. The first, certainly in hard tech, is the hardware technical side. Like, can you actually build the thing that you're wanting to build? And that's very hard and difficult. Fundraising is another one. It's its own beast, like we just said, that you have to go through. I almost put hiring and team building as its own separate individual game and important pillar. What are some of the ways that you've been able to hire the right people? You mentioned you've scaled X just in a couple of years. What are some tips or tricks or advice you give to founders on scaling a team?
Yeah, hiring is also quite hard. We, in particular, we follow this method that was recommended to us by 50 Years VC, who is one of our earliest backers.
Also great.
Yeah, also
Love
great. And they recommend using this method called the WHO method, WHO, WHO method. So I read the book on the WHO method, and like Evan, also my co-founder, read the book, and we follow that pretty much to a T, I would say. And that has greatly improved our odds of success. The short of it is, you ask a specific set of questions for every person that you interview. Like, you're not just like spitballing like what question you'll ask on a given day. So you have like some consistency in your process, and you really get into like, why do they want to work at this particular position? Like, why is this the right point in their career? What are their strengths and weaknesses, et cetera? And that has really helped tone our hiring process. We've never had to let anyone go. We are at 16 people now, and I think it's worked really well. So plug for that as well.
Is the WHO process, is it an acronym, or what is the meaning of the term WHO?
No, not an acronym, just WHO.
Okay, got it. I thought it was going to be like why, humble. I don't know. What
Yeah, right.
But that's good. We'll link that in the show notes too, because resources like that are great.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that the other part that I think is difficult is how you attract very smart people? Because, I mean, you mentioned you have chemists, and a lot of folks we're talking to, they have physicists and folks that are on there. The IQ level's got to be an average, twice as much as it is in maybe a normal company. How do you attract very smart people? Is it mission driven? Early stage, it really can't really be salary driven, but you got to pitch a little bit of that as well.
Yeah.
How do you balance those two things when you're trying to attract very smart people?
Like, just anecdotally, I guess what has, I think, helped people find us is like, we post a lot on LinkedIn, like updates. We're probably more transparent than most companies with like what's going on at the company, I would say. Post pictures of the team getting together, or pictures of the stack getting really big, or I write on occasion, I gotta get back to it, but I write like Substack posts. I wrote one about our first big deployment. I wrote one about, recent changes with the big beautiful bill, of how that affects batteries, specifically LFP. So put stuff out there so that people can find you. That's like ultimately the best way to source candidates that are mission driven, genuinely excited about what you're doing, like very smart folks. Like, they see the vision, right? Like, they're not just going to join any company. They need to like feel like it's going to fulfill them and like be something that's really impactful. So I don't know, put stuff out there. That's the best way to hire.
I like that. I mean, that's good advice. Yeah. Put stuff out there so that when people can find out about you and come to you, and the more that you put out there, the more likelihood that will happen.
Yeah.
I know we're running up on time here. Maybe the last question, what are some of the things that you're very excited about right now that you're building within the company that over the next year or two, you mentioned you just raised a new round. So you're thinking, next milestone type of thing. Anything you can share about what you're hoping to do during this next milestone that's exciting?
Yeah. We're making this really big electrochemical stack that does the extraction of the lithium from the brine before it eventually gets made into LFP. And it's getting big.
You said bigger than you.
It's bigger than me. That's right.
Yeah.
Which is just, first of all, awesome to see. Like, it was like a napkin sketch 2.5, 3 years ago or something. So now it's like real and bigger than me. And we're going to deploy this big system at like a real brine site, push real brine through that thing, make real lithium precursor, make real LFP from that. And that's coming in the next like month or so, actually. So we're pumped about that. Team has been working extremely hard to meet that lofty goal. And it's going to be sweet. We got to make the stack even bigger and copy paste that thing to process more and more lithium, make more LFP. Yeah.
We will put in pictures. You've had some pictures already that you posted. We'll make sure that those are on the page and people can look at that. And then maybe when you launch the big one officially, we'll update the page and continue to show it.
Love it. Yeah, sounds great.
Eric, thank you so much for being on here. Maybe we'll do a round two maybe in a year or so to talk about some of the progress, maybe after you've raised your third round too, and some of the difficult pieces there. But appreciate you being on. I think a lot of people will appreciate the candidness and openness that you had here. Thank you again, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
You bet, Matty V. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
Hoist the black flag high, let the cables hum. Code and cannon ready, futures beating like a drum. Charts are drawn in circuits, treasure maps in AI. We're sailing for the edge where bold ideas never die. Pirates only, all hands on deck.